Hello everyone, Cobrex here today to give some thoughts on the March 8th, 2021 digital event that Monster Hunter had. I love these kind of events. In Monster Hunter World, the updates became events in and of themselves. They reveal the reveals of mechanics, monsters, and what the plans for the game are always so much fun. So without further ado, I'll give some of my thoughts. Of course, the most prevalent thing to me was the style switching mechanic that they revealed for the game. I think style switching will be awesome. I hope this will allow for player variability and individuality, as well as people picking skills based on situational dependence and depending on what monster they're fighting, and also the kind of struggles they're having with a particular monster. I think this kind of direction with Monster Hunter, if it's done really well, can be really great. They had something similar to this in GU, kind of, where they allowed you to pick certain skills. We'll see if it's like that. I don't think it'll be like that, though. Whereas in GU, you kind of had different classes and different moves. So if you were Adept class, you had one or two moves. One move, I think, and it allowed... Yeah, you could choose one move, but the advantage of having Adept style was that your evasions had a lot more iframes and allowed you to counterattack during those dodges. But then you might have Striker style, I think, which would it would just give you three moves. I don't see them going that direction in this game. I see probably everyone will have two moves, and you'll be able to pick what they are. And what I'm most excited for is, yeah, just players allowing themselves to cover for weaknesses. Let me try to explain. Just in my own experience too, perhaps with dual blades you're not good at iframing, so the wire silk skill really helps. The one that basically imitates Adept style from GU, where you use it, you have a lot of iframes, and if the monster hits you during that, you counterattack and you reposition yourself at the same time. Yeah, maybe you're not good at iframing, and so you choose that skill. I'm pretty good at iframing, but what I actually don't like is that shuriken ability that the dual blades has, where you kind of just poke the monster, and then 5 seconds later it explodes and deals an amount of damage in that spot according to what or how many hits you had on that spot. I don't really like that move, so I would love to be able to change that move. But yeah, I could see a lot of players thinking the exact opposite. Maybe they love both moves. Maybe they love that evasion move. Like I don't really. I think that's really cool that I could play with other dual blades players. Maybe theoretically you have 4 dual blades players, but they all play a different style. I think that would be really cool to come across. It also make watching people play funner too. I mean, like in Monster Hunter World these days, you can watch 2 dual blades or 4 dual blades players or any weapon and see people's character and their personality be externalized in that weapon. You can see their individual thought process, but for the most part, when I watch dual blades players, the goal of each one is the same. It's to blade dance as much as possible. Maybe some are better at jumping off of ledges and getting that Levi attack on the back off. Maybe some do 2 or 6 fold slash a little more, but generally it looks the same. But imagine maybe you have the top 5 dual blades players in the world, and you watch each one of them, and maybe they all just prefer different skills. It seems really important that it's all horizontally balanced, because if it becomes this skill is the best, you have to use this skill if you want to be the best in the world, then it's not fun. But if it's horizontally balanced, then you can have 5 different speedrunners or 5 different top players playing the same weapon with all these different skills. That is exciting, and that is really fun and awesome. Now on to Magna Malo. I wanted the demo back, and I wanted a new monster fight. Mainly because I just want to play this game overall, and I kind of can't just wait anymore. But how do you all feel about fighting the flagship monster in the demo? They literally just did this with Iceborne, and I always felt that this was extremely strange. Perhaps they picked the flagship monster because it's the most well done, or it's the most hype, quote unquote. Looking back on Iceborne, Velkhana, in my opinion, other than Namiel, was definitely by far, for Iceborne, the most well done Elder Dragon in that game. It was a total blast to fight, and it incorporated more of the Iceborne mechanics, all of the Clutch Claw, more than any other fight, especially with compared to the ripped from world monsters like Kushala that they would just throw into master rank, and Clutch Claw would feel worthless because you can't even Clutch Claw it at all. Maybe if you use Elder Seal and it's not enraged and maybe have some wind resist, then maybe you could Clutch Claw it. But I don't know. The point is that compared to the Elder Dragons before Iceborne, when they transitioned those ones to Iceborne, they didn't really come off so well. Whereas Velkhana and Namiel, but mainly Velkhana, had many moves that would allow you during those moves to use a Clutch Claw. For instance, when Velkhana would go vertically and pour ice onto the ground, you could run, you could evade it kind of, or you could Clutch Claw into its face and get a Tenderize. That worked well with the Iceborne mechanic and showed that game's mechanic, so it made sense why Velkhana was the demo monster for Iceborne. So in that sense, it's cool. It's epic, it's hype, it's fun, it's thematic. You get all these visual effects. It gets people just like, oh my gosh, man, this is awesome. But personally, for a new monster in the demo, I just would have preferred Acnosome or Tetranodon. It's not nearly as hype. It's not nearly as fun. They could be more easily beaten, certainly compared to Magnamalo. And yeah, you'll have less buzz about, oh my gosh, this monster, oh, it's crazy, I can't wait to play. But and then people also, there's hype about like, oh, I tried for hours to beat Velkhana in the demo and Iceborne in groups, and I had no chance. I tried for hours and I couldn't do it, and that makes it hype. But let's say you do beat it. Let's say you do beat it in the demo, and you see Velkhana die, or Magnamalo die, you hear the death screech, you get that feeling before you even play the game. How do you all feel about that? I always felt like that was kind of weird. You're mimicking what a pivotal encounter, a centerpiece encounter is for that game in a demo, and you're getting all of that gratification, and it might not be the same, but when you do that in the game itself, I mean, doesn't that kind of nerf some of that gratification? I don't know. I'm wondering what you all think. So, for instance, yeah, I see the pros and cons. The way I think about it, like, imagine before the Fatalis update for Iceborne, 2 weeks before it came out, there was a demo for it. and sure, it's nerfed. Maybe it's like a 15-minute Fatalis quest. Maybe you only get 2 phases instead of the 3 that are in the game. But yeah, just imagine you played that demo and then you beat this big bad monster, and then 2 weeks later that the update came out, and then you actually fought Fatalis for real with your armor. Big deal. It's like, isn't that just this is subjective, but I would rather save that finality for the actual game itself. I'd rather enthrall myself completely in that experience and not fight it again and be like, oh yeah, I know its moves already because I fought it 30 times in the demo. That's just my opinion. I also love the danger warning on the Magnamalo quest. It's like, hey, get the hell out of here. You're gonna get messed up. Don't do this. I don't know. I like it. Alright, next I'll talk about the Rampage. They're really pushing this mode. I'm definitely not sure how I feel about it. With me, with just the core of the Monster Hunter gameplay, it's always hard for things to go wrong, so I'm not going to complain too much about it. But to me, these kinds of hunts have always felt different. They can be fun, but eventually they get, through trial and error, get more and more synthesized based on the tools that you have around you, like the Ballista and the Dragonator and all that kind of stuff. As compared to a normal hunt where, unless you're a speedrunner that wants to trap spam, or status spam a monster, there's a certain feeling of organicism, if that's a word. You know, you get to fight, you get to try your hardest, you get to, there's some give and take, you get hit, there's some excitement. Compare that to something like Zora Magdaros. Load cannons. Okay, here's your build for Zora. I guess have good health and have heavy artillery. That's it. But yeah, load cannons, shoot Dragonator, shoot arrows if you want. Like, that's, that's basically it. Zora isn't the best example because that is a completely artillery-based fight in, well, at least the second phase of it, which is the hardest phase, if you want to say it's even hard. That's about it. For something like this, it might be a little bit more like a Fatalis fight, where they give you a Dragonator, they give you a roaming ballista, they give you some arrows. You don't need to use and they give you cannons. I forget all about the cannons because I've never used them, but yeah, they give you those options. You don't have to use them. You can fight the monsters straight up. It makes it a lot easier, though. That stuff has to be balanced out with the actual fighting of the monster that has to occur. The more stuff they give you, though, and the more powerful it is, the more you're almost compelled to use them, and the more that they themselves, as the developers, have to balance how powerful and useful those things are. If they're too useless, no one uses them. If they're no one uses them. If they're too powerful, you have to make the health of the monster adjust accordingly to make them viable. And then when they're viable, they almost become necessary. You see this in virtually every solo speedrun of Fatalis, where everyone uses the Dragonator and everyone uses Temporal Mantle with heavy artillery too, and the roaming ballista. Yeah, that's like almost an entirely necessary part of the fight. And, that might be fun, I think, but it also does add an element of, like, this is kind of rehearsed because I now know, like, yeah, every run I do, Dragonator, and every run I do, roaming ballista once or twice. This looks a lot more dense. They have so many things. It looks like they have so many things going on. It's going to be like this step-by-step process where, like, again, that can be fun, but it's also, it kind of contrasts with the rest of the game. And the rest of the game, generally, you go into a hunt, anything can happen. You're fighting a monster, maybe another monster will show up, maybe you'll get hit by something you didn't expect, blah, blah, yada, yada, yada. With this, with what I can tell, it's going to be set up your tower defense game, going to shoot at it, and then they're going to tell you to attack, because they're going to give you that damage buff, apparently, that says, hey, go attack it. And then you're going to go back to your cannons, and it'll be epic and thematic, but how much player input and engagement will there be with this stuff, more so than like the normal fights that feel really organic? So I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying I'm not excited for it. What I am saying is that I think it's fair to question and critique this as an individual thing that is somewhat separate from the rest of the game, because the rest of the game won't be like Rampage mode, and it's okay to like or dislike it based on whether or not this is what you signed up for, per se. They're also going for something a little different too, whereas those siege fights that were in the past, what I did enjoy about them was the awesome epic cinematicism of it all. Lao Shen Long Dragon, you get this big field, all these cannons, and then by the end of it, you usually have to fight it a little bit with your own weapon. It's really cool, it's really thematic. I'm not sure how I feel about 6 to 10 monsters, Pukes and Tobi Kadachis and Arzuroses and Rathalos, and it's just like, maybe it could be cool, but what I like is the cinematicism of a big giant monster that is just unstoppable and you have to take it down. And yeah, this is different. This is 6 to 10 little monsters. I don't know. I don't know. So it's different. So it's easy to say that like the Apex or the big threat monster in the Rampage mode is what they're trying to use to replace that obvious cinematic, climactic moment of that hunt. Whereas Lao Shen Lung is like, it's obvious, like the whole hunt is this big monster that you have to fight, and if you take it down, you win, and if you don't, you lose. But it's very grandiose. With 6 to 10, I don't know how many monsters there will be, but that's just what I'm guessing. With that little monsters, it lacks that finality. Maybe the last thing you do in a rampage without any external mechanics, like a big threat, is maybe the last thing you do is like you shoot a slinger pod at a Tobi Kadachi and it dies, and then that's the end of the big ending of that rampage. Wouldn't it be very cool? So you can tell that with the apexes and stuff, that's what they're attempting to do, is to try and fill in that gap and try and make it end with a bang. So kind of cool, but at the same time, it's no Lao Shen. It's no it's no big Safi'jiiva. That's not really a siege fight, but it's not as grandiose for sure. To me, it's like instead of fighting Lao Shen, imagine fighting 6 to 10 little Lao Shens. Or 12 little Lao Shen Longs. Like, it's I'd rather have the big boy. Now I want to talk about the NPC involvement in the Rampage mode and what I believe to be some of the experimentation they're doing. Now, to note, for starters, in Iceborne, I think we saw for the first time real NPC involvement. I'm not sure. Feel free to correct me, but when we had that mission in the Celiana supply cache, I'm probably not the only one that was jarred by the fact that we actually saw NPC hunters actually helping us at a certain point when they had to mow down Velkhana. They're kind of bringing back that kind of mentality again, where they're going to have NPCs involved. I'm wondering what they're thinking down the line with this kind of thing. For some people it was a bit of a flaw that you would have a 16-player siege in Kulve Taroth sieges, but it was only 4 people to a siege, or 4 people in a group at a time, and it was the same thing with Safi'jiiva. I wonder if by having all these NPCs on the field, much like how Wyvern riding is obviously an experimental thing for something like Monster Hunter Stories, it allows them to practice in Rise. They get to practice Wyvern riding in Rise so that they can implement it for games like Stories and such. I wonder if this having all this stuff on the screen and all these mechanics and all these NPCs and all these players and their palamutes, by the way, so if you include the NPCs, who knows how many will be on the field at a time. If you include everyone's palamute, you got at least 8 to 10 people at a time. I wonder if this means in the future they're gonna actually try and have more than 4 players at a time during hunt, or during certain hunts, like maybe maybe the Fatalis in the future will allow for 6 or 8, or maybe it'll be an actual siege. It's very experimental. I don't know if they're actually going to do any of that, but I'm just kind of curious if this is their way of experimenting for that kind of stuff in the future, or if that's kind of where they're thinking of taking things. But if one thing's clear, it's that they are adapting to the modern market. Back in the old days where Monster Hunter was quaint, and you had Monster Hunter 1, and it was basically a single-player game, and you had, you had some online play, but, it's just single-player. You could prepare for a hunt on your own, and now they see that the future is multiplayer, and they look at these MMOs, and they look at all these other Battle Royale games, and they're thinking, first of all, it's obvious that they're adapting with all the quality of life changes, but also the pacing of this game is so much more. I did make a video on this. I didn't release it, but I did make a video where I talked specifically about the pacing of this game. Like, Monster Hunter Rise is going to be so much faster than other games, and that's their way of adapting to the market, but it also goes pretty kind of against the pacing of the old games. So it's clear that they're adapting and that they're changing, and yeah, so I think it is, you could speculate as to if the future is going to be massive monster battles with more than 4 players. I think they always want to have an element of, letting the player decide how they want to experience the game. So if they want to experience it solo, they can experience it solo. That's fine. But I think they want to have this adaptability or variability where it's just like, well, if you want to have an awesome 10-player fight against this amazing, grandiose monster, we might have that too. Or at least in this game, in this case, a rampage of monsters that you need at least 10, players, most of which right now are NPC. But that might be a Switch thing too. Maybe the Switch can't handle that many players. I don't see 8-player free-for-alls on Smash Online. So, you bring this to the PS5 or to the PC, and it's like, well, shit. Maybe we'll have an 8-player Siege or something. Personally, I enjoy Monster Hunter a bit more as a solo experience. If I have some great friends to play with, I love to play with them. But that just doesn't seem to be the case for me. So yeah, that's my kind of thoughts on Rampage and the experimentation that I think that they're going for right now. Alright, finally, I'm just going to throw out some quick notes. I'm excited to see the returning second-tier monsters, Zinogre and Nargacuga. They all look like they got new moves, which I love. I love learning how to adapt to new moves and how to reposition myself during that. I think that looks great. I'm really curious if Zinogre is going to still be the breakdance monster of the game or not. I'm not surprised Chameleos is back at all. My attempt at a rule of thumb is that anything pastel colored, they will try and bring back within reason, depending on how many monsters they can fit in this game. Not surprised that Chameleos is back. I'm like, yeah, he's got... If a monster looks like it would visually fit in this game, they're going to try and throw it in. Yeah, I think that's just obvious. The locations look great, of course. I'm trying to think because they've decided again with their new Monster Hunter that they're changing everything. Characters have names now. They want people, I think, to relate more to these characters on a name basis. I think that's why they have names. But when you look at location names, you still see very old school names being brought about. They're calling these locations the Flooded Forest or the Sandy Plains. Yeah, they're clearly, those are like old school location names where they gave like no effort, but now they want to have names for NPCs because they want to make it more personable. I wonder if in the future they're actually going to have real names for locations instead of redundant and obvious names. Not complaining, I don't really care about location names, but I'm just kind of curious about that. The multiplayer system looks way better. I love the automatic prompt to like other hunters. This is really convenient, and I look really forward to liking no one because I don't need any of y'all's help. I wish and hope there was a reward for beating Magnamalo in the demo. I actually really liked getting a Velkhana shard. That might sound contradictory to what I was saying about having Velkhana in the demo for Iceborne at all, but I did like getting that shard. It was pretty cool. It was just a little thing. You can make a Palico weapon with it, which I thought was a little much, but I just liked getting that little shard that said, hey, way to go. You beat Velkhana, now you get its shard in Iceborne. It serves no purpose. But, yeah, here you go. And then you get this little token that says, yeah, I did it. It's pretty cool. I hope you get something like that for beating Magnamalo. Alright, guys, that was a lot longer than I was planning for. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it's kind of just speculation, but it's just kind of what goes through my head when I'm watching this kind of stuff. So, all right. Thanks for watching. If you made it through, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you want. If you don't, I don't care. All right. Have an awesome time. I'll definitely be streaming or uploading some footage of me playing Magnamalo and hopefully soloing it when it comes out. So I'm really, really excited about that. Well, until then, take care.